We're rolling.
Okay, so you're going to talk to these cameras here. These are live and they are your friends. So if you can tell us your name.
My name is Linda.
And how many children have you got?
4.
I think it feels like there's more out there.
No, they're just a bit loud sometimes.
We have 4 children, and so how old are they all?
We've got, my oldest is 12, then we've got 11-year-old, 8-year-old and 6-year-old.
Okay, so let's go back to, is this an injury story? Okay, you just said that. So let's go back to they like to say that we're anti-vaccine, which you're clearly...
So I'm not anti-vaccine because my kids were vaccinated.
There you go. So tell us what you were thinking about vaccines.
I didn't think anything about vaccines. I remember the day my eldest was born, they said to me, can you consent to this vitamin K either orally or by injection? I didn't know what it was. So I agreed to have it orally. Didn't know what it was. I didn't even know really what vaccinations were, but then when you get the letters through the post, you take your kids for the vaccinations. If you miss the appointment, they send you another letter, they phoned you, they hound you, and get your kids vaccinated. Then it came to Paul, and Paul had his vaccination.
He's your second child?
No, my third child.
Third child, okay.
Where should I start first?
No, you're good, but I mean, which ones are injured? You're
3.
All 3 children?
All 3 children.
Start with the eldest one.
The eldest one, Ellie, okay. When Ellie first had her first vaccination at 8 weeks old, her skin went really funny. Eczema, she basically looked like burns on her. I went to the doctors, we got steroid cream. I remember one day in the health visitor's office, they brought 3 other health visitors in to check her body. And I thought, God, do they think I've done something wrong here? And they told me to go and buy some Diprobase. So I went to Boots, got Diprobase. Ellie's skin was always really bad. She didn't walk until she was 20 months old. She bum shuffled. She was very delayed at speaking, but she did put words together. It was the Tamiflu one that did it for Ellie. She had an instant reaction. She was sick. It was when swine flu was going about and they scare you. We was around somebody that had swine flu, but we didn't know at the time they did. So they came out and they gave them this spray up the nose. 10 minutes, the doctor had gone. We had to phone him to come back because Ellie just started being sick. Her skin was red raw. After that, she went down to single words and pointing at everything. The doctors just thought I was paranoid. I didn't put it. I thought it was the Tamiflu spray that she had, but I'm not a doctor, am I? So I didn't know. And it came to Paige. Paige, after she had her first 8-week jab, Menc was given out then as well, and an influenza one, which I didn't know was in it, but the hip is influenza. Paige got chest infections all the way after her 8, 12, and 3 months jobs were all slightly delayed because she was on antibiotics. She had her MMR. A couple of days later, I took her and Ellie swimming. There's only 12 months and so many days between them. We come out of swimming. They both developed a bit of a rash. The doctors said it was chicken pox. Paige got worse, very lethargic, very high temperature. They sent us to the A&E and we was on the wards. At the time, they told us it was streptococcus, a water-based infection. So obviously we sent environmental health round to the swimming pool and they checked it out to make sure it was all clean. They said sometimes they could use too much chlorine, but that's what they told us it was, streptococcus infection. I've now got the medical records for this because at the time I was saying, thank God she's had that vaccine. Things could have been so much worse if she hadn't had that vaccine. But I've looked back on the medical records and they did a buttock swab and a throat swab, and the culture says Neisseria meningitis, which is the exact same thing they was looking for, and somebody else had a thing. But we knew nothing about this. We just thought it was a water-based infection. And then a couple of months, so anyway, she had lots of antibiotics for months, just didn't clear up. She had the next MMR in the November, the beginning of the December, she had pneumonia. So again,
It's okay.
So again, more antibiotics, more believe in the doctors, don't worry, nothing to do with any vaccines. I didn't even, to be honest, I didn't query the vaccines at that time. Then she went on to get developed. She was diagnosed with asthma because it was always really bad. Then she was fully immunised by the time she had her preschool booster. Then came along Paul. The 31st of March 2009, the health visitor gave Paul 4 jabs. He had 4 injections.
How old is he?
Around 5 months.
Right.
Around 5 months. He reacted in the health visitor's room. His whole body went out, he was screaming, his body was dead tense. And he did that before she put the last one in. And she quickly did it, and she said the pain is because babies don't know pain until they have these injections, but it was his third lot, so we should have known the pain by then. So anyway, he developed a car. I couldn't get him in the car seat. I had to sit in the back of the car with him while someone else drove to get him home because he just did not stop screaming. Go home, give him Calpol and Nurofen, he'll be fine. That's what they say. So we did, Calpol and Nurofen. He had a runny nose, he developed a cold. That day, this came on within hours. For weeks, he was just tired, not eating right. He was sick a couple of times, but not much. And he was just so sleepy. And then it got to this one night, the whole night he was just screaming. And I used to have a boy that would love to snuggle me. He used to snuggle his face next to me, and I used to say it was like a mini dinosaur. You see the baby ones on the TV, snuggling your face. But this one day, my dog would not let me go out of the bedroom. He would not let me go down the stairs. Paul, I'd left him on my bed because he wouldn't settle. He wouldn't let me touch him. He wasn't with it. It was like he didn't recognise any of us. So I phoned the surgery. They had no appointments. So I took him up to A&E, and I says, my boy just won't wake up. He was screaming all night. His eyes are open, but he won't wake up. He didn't have a temperature. His skin was so clammy. It was like he was dripping with sweat, but his temperature was 37.4. There was no temperature. So we got him there, and then pretty quickly at the hospital, they sent us on to the first paediatrician actually, said he's just got a viral infection, there's nothing wrong, and tried to send us home. But there was an Irish doctor there, and he said to her, he had a 3-month-old baby at the time, and he said his 3-month-old baby was a lot more alert than what my boy was there. They shined the light. They did a lumbar puncture. I kept telling them, am I allowed to name the doctor?
You didn't do it live.
Dr. Bernard. I told Dr. Bernard on that ward, my son has been ill since that vaccination. Dr. Bernard spoke to me like I was a stupid school person that did not know what I was talking about. I knew my son was ill after that jab. The health visitor knew my son was ill after that jab. Dr. Bernard knew it was that jab because I have the medical notes, and he's questioned the Men-C. He has questioned how many Men-C is given to this child, because that year the Men-C vaccination was given at the 8-week jab, the 12-week jab and the 16-week jab. Since been taken off now, they don't give it as much now. So Paul's in the hospital.
There was a Hep B.
No, it was DTaP, Hib, IPV and PCV. So there was an influenza B in there.
That's a lot of vaccines.
The doctor told me that it couldn't possibly have been the vaccine because the vaccination that he had was a Men-C vaccination, and he said Paul had Men-B, so it couldn't have been possible. He had a shadow on his chest. They did an x-ray, had a shadow on his chest, and his brain was swollen. And I kept saying, he's been ill since this jab, and he told me it just wasn't possible. And in the end I shut my mouth because I didn't want to get kicked out of the hospital. You have signs all over the hospitals saying, if you're aggressive with them, you're going to leave the premises. So after a few days in the hospital, Paul had these things stuck in him all over. He still had no temperature. The whole time, his temperature did not go above 37.5. He was in the hospital for a week. I asked them when he'll properly wake up. And they said, you just have to give him time. His immune system will be down because he's so ill. After a week, we came home. We went back to the hospital daily so he could have his IV fluids, I think they were called. And then after another week off, then they sent us home, and that's it. We went to a follow-up check. They did hearing tests. They told us he's probably going to be deaf when he's older. That might be a side effect, so come back. So then he was due obviously afterwards, he didn't eat properly afterwards, he didn't drink properly, he was always sick. He was in and out of A&E for the following 4 months, and it was all the same problems, respiratory problems, congestion on his throat, not eating, and they kept saying that his legs, there was always like a rash on his legs, and on all the medical records they've noted where all the rashes are. And then it came to the next vaccination, and I went to speak to the GP about it. And to be honest, he was good. He understood that my boy reacted, and he sent me to the paediatrician to discuss it with the paediatrician. I told her I didn't want him to have the MMR because by this point I'd heard it could cause autism. So she assured me, I've got a letter with me as well, that there is no connection I've got it in my bag. I can go and grab it quickly if you want.
Yeah, please, please, please.
Yeah, she assured me there was no link between autism and the MMR, and she also wrote in it that it was not possible that Paul's meningitis was an adverse reaction to the vaccination. Anybody that reads an insert from 2009 for the DTaP, the Hib, and the PCV will see that aseptic meningitis is a side effect. And it just makes me so angry that they tell us we're wrong and we know we're not wrong. So I went to the paediatrician, she assured me, so we gave Paul his first MMR. He couldn't walk for days. We went back to the doctor. The doctor, different doctor this time, told me it's very good that Paul had that reaction, because if you inject people, it doesn't take to everybody, but if they have a slight reaction, you know that injection's in there and it's working, it's doing what it's supposed to. So Paul had that. Then he had his second MMR. And I didn't know it at the time, but it was reflux. His diet was so limited.
Wait, how long between the first MMR and the second MMR?
3 months. 3 months. Yeah, 3 months. It was given younger then.
When did that start happening?
12 to 15 months.
So you get one at 12 months and one at 15 months?
I have to check the red book.
Yeah.
He had 2 MMRs and then the preschool booster after that. Even preschool booster made him ill after that. He got chest infections again.
When did you wake up and realise that these vaccines were hurting your kids? When did you stop?
When my 4th child stopped speaking after her first MMR, and that was the last vaccine that has ever entered any of my children's body. And I would kill somebody before I would let anybody inject my child.
You really trusted the doctors?
Oh, totally. With my life, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis as a child as well, which now, and I'm looking back and I'm thinking it's probably down to the vaccines. I even had the MMR after my 4th child was born because they told me I wasn't immune to rubella. And since then, that was 6 years ago now, never before then had I ever had any type of constipation, anything like that. And how did they even know I wasn't immune to rubella? They couldn't possibly have known that unless they tested me.
You did everything and more.
Everything. I gave them every damn antibiotic that they gave to my children. Every antibiotic.
Yeah, let me take it back.
People used to tell me, I miss Ellie and Paige, my eldest two, they was always ill, constipation. Ellie was every other day, she would be violently being sick. Her stomach would be so solid. She went to the hospital, she was under them for so many years. They did x-rays and the chronic constipation. On the x-ray, I've never seen anything like it. She had poo up here. Your bowel's supposed to be down here, but she had poo up here. She was, it was awful. She was always in pain until we finally give up on healthcare.
So what do you do now?
We use a herbalist and we use a brain injury clinic, which we found for Paul, that are the first people to admit that yes, vaccine reactions do happen. Yeah.
But what is your advice to new parents?
Don't vaccinate. If you want to, simply read a vaccine insert and see if you want to take those risks for your child. I had one daughter that had pneumonia after a vaccine. On the vaccine insert, it's a reported side effect, pneumonia. Meningitis with Paul, he is my worst affected child. 2 of my kids will not live independently when they're grown up. I also have education, health, they've all been a complete waste of time, unhelpful. Ellie, as a child, she was incontinent, she was always sick, she used to self-harm in school. When she got to first year juniors, things got really, really bad. Her anxiety was through the roof, I couldn't get her to school. There was a few doctors actually that helped us realise she's probably on the autistic spectrum, and she got a few different referrals. So we started through CAMHS, telling CAMHS that your anti-vaccine is the worst thing that you can ever do. 2 of my daughters were going through CAMHS at the same time. They both had a clinical psychologist dealing with each one, and one supervisor dealing with both of them. The one dealing with Paige was lovely, she really, really was nice, and I started there a few months before Ellie. Paige had all of her ADOS done, and we were supposed to have the results, which we were told was going to be ADOS, was going to be a diagnosis of ASD, autism spectrum disorder. The psychologist that was dealing with my other daughter didn't like me whatsoever. When you go through the history on CAMHS, they ask, did your child have loss of words? So obviously, yes, she did. When she had the Tamiflu, she went down to 1 word and started pointing. She didn't like my views. I told her, at the time I only had 1 child diagnosed autistic. We didn't get along whatsoever. On the first day, I can't remember the exact date, I've got it written down, the head teacher at the school was really helpful, to be fair. And he sent this man with me from the Bridge Project at a school that was meant to help people with kids with extra needs. He knew this psychologist and me just did not like each other. She wasn't listening. She wasn't speaking to Ellie's doctors like she was supposed to. So this day, on the Thursday, the head teacher had arranged for this person to come with me for support to the psychologist meeting about Ellie. So she asked him to stay at the end of the meeting. I told her she didn't want to do an ALDOS. She didn't see any autistic traits in Ellie whatsoever. She didn't want to do an ALDOS. I told her at this appointment that I was going to put in a complaint to CAMHS about her and to the GMC because she wasn't listening to me. She took a personal dislike to me because of my vaccination views. The next day, the Friday, I got a phone call to cancel Paige's Monday appointment for the final appointment where you're supposed to receive the reports with the autistic spectrum diagnosis. On Friday that got cancelled and never got it for months and months. And then when I finally got Paige's report, it said on it, there's a list of recommendations, and one was for the mother's mental health to be checked. Okay? And the whole report was nothing like my daughter whatsoever, nothing like her. And within a week, things suddenly started changing. I spoke to the head teacher. I said to him, this woman's trying to make out to people I'm a nutter. I got all the medical records. So when I found out for 14 months, when my child was self-harming, wetting herself in school, physically putting things into herself to cut herself, within 1 week of me telling that psychologist that I was putting in a complaint, suddenly all her Paige's reports from before that date all went missing. Didn't get to see any of them, and everything changed in this one psychologist report. She's had so much influence. She wrote a letter that she'd spoken to the school teacher, and the school teacher's opinion on my daughter had completely changed since 6 months before. I mean, she didn't see any problems with her. But within that week of me telling her I'm putting in that complaint, she'd wrote to the paediatrician and everybody, arranged safeguarding meetings, and tried to make out I had an fabricated illness. This went on for 16 months until my daughter's genetic test came back to say that she has got a chromosome deletion of 16p 11.2-2. Well, they couldn't really say I had an fabricated illness then, because everything I'd been telling them about my daughter over the years, with the overeating, the violence, everything, all came under this missing chromosome, which, yes, I do believe was caused by vaccinations. I think that was the Tamiflu vaccination. So anyway, the paediatrician then wrote to everybody involved and said, we'll put an end to all this. But that one person, the influence that one person had because she didn't like my views, that prevented my kids getting any help that they needed to. It really did. She made out I was a nutter to people. It's just disgusting what they do. I only know that she's officially did say that she thought I had an fabricated illness because I've got all the records. But since then, Paige had an ALDOS done. Sorry,
just explain to people what an ALDOS is. It's a diagnosis.
It's a test they do to see how you score for an autism assessment. But now I've had the medical records. I've got the ALDOS that was done before that complaint went in, and it says diagnosis consistent with ASD. But yet, when I put that complaint in, she changed it all to no traits, nothing. All the school reports and everything was changed, and Paige had no ASD traits whatsoever. She's as literal as they come, Paige. She's super, super, unbelievably clever. She really is. But if I didn't get Ellie's genetic test results back, that could have gone a lot worse. This went on for 18 months now, and they will have had to inform the school. 3 different teachers Ellie had through there. Not one of them were listening to me. They was following an fabricated illness protocol. And I kept saying at the time, people are just pacifying this situation. I'll tell you one funny thing, actually. It's not funny really, it's quite serious. During this fabricated illness that she was making out to people I had, there must have been something on my medical file, because my son likes a certain type of cake. He only likes one cake, and you make it a certain way, and you put the chocolate on top. But when the chocolate hardens on the top, it's not cooking chocolate, it's quite hard to cut. So this day I'd got in from school, and when you get in from school, the first 20 minutes were always hectic and everyone wanted cake. My sister was there, she can back me up from this, I didn't do it to myself. So I was using a steak knife to cut the cake with my left hand instead of my right hand. Somehow, I've got the knife stuck in my hand, right in that bit there, the end of the steak knife. and I'm at the hospital. 3 hours I was in A&E with this knife stuck in my hand.
Oh, no.
And everyone kept asking me, the nurses, why did you do this to yourself? Why would you do this to yourself? They even asked me if I wanted to take a picture of the x-ray. And I remember when I got home saying to my husband, they honestly think that I've done this to myself. I felt such an idiot at A&E, and they go, why would anyone put a knife in the hand? But there must have been something on my file, because this was the same year that this was all going on.
That's terrible.
It is, it's laughable really. You could make it into a comedy show. But that's
Did
what
they try and give
happens.
you a tetanus jab?
I wouldn't take anything. I wouldn't let them put me to sleep either. They put one thing in that went up into a big lump because they wouldn't pull the knife out without putting that in. But yeah,
So the moral of the story is do not cut a cake with the wrong hand.
that's right. And
Yeah,
not when
steak
you're rushing
knife.
The
either.
steak knife with hard chocolate.
Yeah.
Well, you've been to hell and back, really.
Yeah.
Well, you're not back yet, are you? You're still, it's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, it is tough. My boy is the one. Everyone says it's autism. It's not just autism.
Right.
You know, he is 8 years old, and
He's a lovely boy.
he is a lovely boy, and he's so intelligent. But his life was took away from him. If they had simply given me a vaccine insert to read, or told me there was a risk, I wouldn't have took the risk. I really would not have took the risk. Another thing with the health professionals, don't trust them. Okay, I gave up on the NHS quite a while ago, so I decided to go private, to give one last doctor a go. So I went to a neurologist, Dr. Singh, the Spire Hospital in Manchester, and I went there this February. And I wanted to know why my son was so tired all the time, you know, why he's always sleeping. He was in a special school at the time, but it just got to the point, he'd be sleeping all weekend, he'd be sleeping when he comes in the evening, he's just in his room. He was getting no time for us, no time to have fun. Just exhausted. So we went to this Dr. Singh. He did a full assessment on Paul. He knocked his knees and stuff. We was in there for 45 minutes. And then he asked me for Paul's timeline of events. So the timeline of the events, I wrote down how he had had that vaccine on the 31st of March 2009, and by the 21st of April he was in the hospital with septicemia meningitis. That doctor then told me my son was hypermobile, and that's why he's tired all the time. Hypermobile, and that's why he's tired all the time. He's very rigid when he moves and stuff. The only help he did offer me was medication to help him sleep. When I said medication to help him sleep, it's not gonna work. He's sleeping all the time. He does have a bit of broken sleep, but he sleeps better than ever. He eats better than ever than for what it's been for him anyway. But that was his way. I said, and what's the alternative? What's the alternative to giving him this medicine? He said, you asked me to help. I can help your son's autism. This is how I can help. I can give him medication. But he asked me, when I told him he had the vaccination, and 3 weeks after he was in the hospital with meningitis, he asked me if it was proven. I said, by who? I'm his mother. Who needs to prove it? There was supposed to be a £250 appointment. He didn't charge me for the appointment. I couldn't work out why he didn't charge me for the appointment. I asked him a simple question as well, because I'd been to occupational therapy with Paul, and out of all the health professionals I've seen, I do quite rate occupational therapy. They taught me a lot of stuff about my eldest daughter that I didn't know, and it helped other stuff. They showed me how to help her. So with Paul, I thought they would have spotted if he was hypermobile. So I asked this Dr. Singh, you know, are you sure he's hypermobile? Because I don't think OT could have missed it. And he started popping his arm out and said, I'm not lying to you, and started popping it out. So in the end, I got up and walked out because he said he wasn't. He says, what do you want? You're not paying anything for this appointment. I said, this isn't insurance. I says, I'm paying privately for you because I want to know once and for all what is going on with my son. He didn't charge me for the appointment. So anyway, we drove home. I cried all the way home, an hour, and driving an hour is a lot for Paul. It really is a lot, and you'll sleep a lot of time after that as well. So a few days later, I phoned up and spoke to Dr. Singh's secretary, because I thought, you know, if you see a paediatrician, they always send a letter out to say how the appointment went. So I wanted to know when I'd received this letter from Dr. Singh, who told me that my son had no neurological problems and was hypermobile in places. So for this no neurological problems, I finally found a brain clinic that I think is going to be able to help Paul. Brain injury clinic it is. They did a full neurological assessment on Paul, and Paul is 71% neurologically impaired. So Dr. Singh, if Dr. Singh had charged me Dr. Singh would have had to send me a report on that appointment. Dr. Singh didn't charge me, so Dr. Singh didn't have to send out any report, so he doesn't have to deal with a vaccine-injured child that he knew was vaccine-injured. And this is how our health professionals work. I don't trust doctors, I don't trust nurses, I don't trust any of them because they'll make it all out to be the parents, so nobody has to speak out for what's going on. I see vaccine injury everywhere. Paul was diagnosed with autism 5 years ago. I didn't know a single autistic person where we lived. I finally met one. And then as the kids got older in school, it's everywhere. You see people, they can't walk right. You know, they've all got asthma. I see it everywhere. People's children getting ill a week after vaccination. Nobody puts the link together. Nobody. They're all getting chest infections. They're all getting chickenpox, which they say it is, or viral infections. Tonsillitis is a big one.
Yeah, that's sick the whole time. Everyone's on antibiotics or carrying inhalers, like you said. Yeah.
You know, in the past I've told people, when I've seen people, I used to really, really preach it to people, don't vaccinate your child, don't vaccinate your child. There was one, he had his MMR, he had a slight temperature afterwards, he was ill, he got fine after that, but he's got a speech problem. I don't know if he has an autistic diagnosis. You know, he wails, and for his age, he shouldn't be, I think he's autistic. I see it everywhere to the point now. I struggle talking to everyday people because the slightest sniffly nose, people are at those doctors and they're getting their prescriptions. Everybody trusts the doctor, and if you don't trust the doctor, you do get labelled a nutter.